right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with founders of Hots&Cots, Rob Evans. That's www.hotscots.app or on your app on a phone, Hots&Cots. Thanks, Rob, for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tracy. So I am a 12-year Army veteran. I enlisted junior year of high school. This 2000. Army Reserve recruiter came up to me and pitched something to me apparently that I liked because I signed up. Talked to my mom and dad, and they agreed. And after junior year of high school, I went off to basic, and then I finished up my AIT. 2001. It was actually, I think, our class or our photo was like 2 days or something like that before 9/11 happened. So right after that, right after I finished up all my schooling for 42 Alpha, I was then deployed to Fort Stewart to help mobilize Third ID shortly after getting back home. So did 12 years, did 6 years in the Army Reserve, and then I felt like I missed it, and then did 6 years in the Army National Guard up here in North Carolina, where I deployed as a 92. Fox to Iraq. I think it was like 2009. Right at the start time. It was my first time I was there. So I spent time there. Got out in 14, and I kind of hung out in the military community on social media, Reddit primarily as a moderator, and just kind of helped out veterans and those that were in on kind of navigating that life.
All right. Yeah, you kind of froze for a moment, and then it caught up for a second. So, but yeah, okay. So you were 92 Fox, you said?
Yeah, that's what I got out as. I got out as a 92 Fox as a petroleum fuel specialist. So it's kind of interesting. I actually was the 42 Alpha, did my time there, and then when I went in the National Guard, I met with the recruiter, and one of the concerns I had, not necessarily a concern, but one of the questions I had was, hey, what is the likelihood of I'm going to get deployed once I kind of sign, once this ink dries? And his response was something of like, your likelihood's low because you're going to go into a new sustainment brigade. It's a brand new thing. They're just getting stood up. So you should be fine. I was like, okay. I think it was like the third drill, I got orders to reclass and also to change units. So I went from driving like a 45-minute drive to my National Guard armory to like a 3+ hour drive to my armory to get ready for mobilization. And then they voluntarily reclassed me to a 92 Fox, which I'm colorblind, red-green colorblind, and you need to have full color vision for that job. But it didn't matter at that time. A lot of, I guess.
And they needed bodies, I guess.
And they did, and it was in. And what folks may not remember from that time was they were reclassing. So they took 92 Foxes and reclassed them as 42 Alphas, and then they would reclass the 42 Alphas as 92 Foxes. So it was like kind of interesting of how they just were reclassing folks into positions they were removing soldiers and bodies from.
That's funny because, see, I was a fuel specialist as well, but mine was 77 Fox because it was 77 Fox and 77 whiskey when I was in. And 77 Fox was fuel, 77 whiskey was water. But they were both, we both stayed at the same barracks when we were at AIT at Fort Lee. But yeah, so I didn't know they changed it to a 92 Fox.
Yeah, they did. They changed it to a 92 Fox. I think water was, it might have been 90, it might be 92 Alpha now. I'd have to check, but they're 92 series as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's funny that they changed the numbers up. How they come up with these numbers and systems and stuff is just crazy.
Well, yeah, and this is kind of even going back further. The 42 Alphas used to be a 75 Hotel, then they changed those as well to the 42 series at some point.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's how the Army does things.
Yeah.
Keep everybody on their toes.
Exactly.
Right. So during your time in, did you have any interesting stories that have to do with food that kind of got you in that?
No, I mean, the only really interesting story, I mean, no real major interesting stories for food. The thing was, You ate well when you were in Kuwait. You ate well. I mean, I was at Fob Falcon, which is a larger fob, and the food there was fine. It was great. It was KBR. So it was great food in the deployment place. The food wasn't great, which is kind of expected. Is when you're like an NTC, you're doing all your MOBUP. It's a lot of MREs. It's inconsistency in that type of food space. Some days it was great. Some days not so great. Actually, I was at Shelby for part of my MOBUP, and the food there wasn't great. And then I was on the advanced party to NTC, and I think that was like it was a bunch of MREs and not great food at Shelby. And then when I got to NTC, they had a really good meal selection there. And me and one of the guys I was with, we were very happy with the food they were giving us over at NTC before we went inside the box. Then you're back to MREs and such.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things. It's funny when I was I went over. I deployed with Air Defense Artillery Unit. I was Army Reserves, and then I signed up for deployment because I was, they were looking for fuelers to join active duty units. I was in a combat engineer unit up in South Carolina when I basically volunteered for a deployment because they came around and started asking, hey, we're needing they need fuelers to go, and I was like, well, I'm not really doing anything. I was newlywed, and it's like extra money. It's go to, originally it was supposed to go to be Kuwait, and I was like, well, cool, all right, Kuwait's not bad. Go ahead and go over there, and there's nothing really major going on right now, so we'll be fine. But then I ended up in Saudi Arabia because the orders changed 5 times after deploying, and so I ended up in Prince Sultan Air Base, and I was there for 9/11. But the food was always great because we were on an Air Force base, and so we had a 24-hour chow hall.
Yep.
And it was like, really good there. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I like this. But when we were prepping to leave to go, we were at Benning to prep to deploy over there. And it was a bunch of reserve guys that are being attached to active duty units. And the chow hall there was like, the guys were ordering pizzas and stuff because we didn't want to go to the chow hall.
Yeah, that's how it was at Shelby. The food wasn't great there. We were at Bragg for a little bit doing mobilization, and we had some options to go to the chow halls there, and they weren't the best either. It's just KBR when you deployed. I did not have a bad meal when I was deployed. I mean, like you said, 24-hour chow halls they had, so that was nice. I think we went to when I was flying out for my midterm, my mid tour leave. We stopped at an Air Force base, and they had a really nice chow hall there.
Yeah, that's kind of a common theme that I've found is the Air Force always had really nice, not always, but the majority of the time I went to an Air Force base, the food was great, the buildings were nice, well maintained, but the Army, they build all the training areas first, and then whatever left over in the budget they put at the chow hall.
Yeah, I don't know, but that is definitely a common theme of Air Force, and their dining facilities are usually very nice. That there's always the exception to the rule, but in chatting and working with some of the Air Force service members with Hots&Cots, it's kind of the impression I get as well.
All right. Well, so now we're kind of onto the Hots&Cots and how you got into it. Let's how did you come up with Hots&Cots? How did you get this started?
Yeah. So it started in 2023, the Government Accountability Report. There was one that came out talking about the Army barracks. And, anyone that's been in the military any amount of time, either veterans or still in, the conditions and kind of what that report revealed wasn't anything new. What was new is to those who have not been in the military. And if you're not in the military, you're not in that space, you're not going to know. And I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine talking about the military, and he asked if my kids wanted to join the military, would I support them? And obviously, I'm going to support my kids, whatever they want to do. If they want to join the military, I'm going to be I'll cheerlead them on. I'll be there, and at the same time, I will also share with them the challenges and things that I see and what's out there, and they can make that decision. But whatever they want to do, I would decide. I would support them. And I shared with him, kind of the situation with the barracks from the government accountability report, and just issues with the dining facilities. And he was shocked. He is like, I didn't know this. And he's an educated man, pays attention to politics, he pays attention to news. So it wasn't anything like it's just not something that's really talked about a lot in the media. So he was very shocked and surprised. Um, and I wanted to raise awareness. So one avenue was Hots&Cots. Bring to light some of these challenges and these issues, the wins as well that the military face. There's kind of this closed sandbox of things that happen with the military. You have ICE, you have ARMA to report issues, but there's no real like insight into that. You can't see what that is. And even to a certain degree, like other soldiers, when they submit issues, they don't know what's happening. They don't know their either battles are facing similar issues at another installation potentially. And then there's also the component of the junior enlisted living in the barracks. They at times get they get overlooked, to be blunt. There's a lot of focus on accompanied families, and rightfully so. They have their challenges in housing as well. But it's the junior enlisted in the barracks. They don't have the same maybe rights at times. If you're a company family and you're relocating to a military installation, what your housing is going to be like. You can get the work order history. You have a little bit more options compared to the barracks. You're going to move to the barracks, and you're going to get what you get. You have no idea what you're going to get for your room layout. You're not necessarily going to know what your DFAC is going to be like. And if you do, it's a lot of that times is word of mouth. Or it's from maybe an NCO who lived in the barracks 4 years ago, who said, oh, the barracks are great. Well, that was 4 years ago. And then you get to the barracks and they're not that great. So I wanted to create a platform where service members, particularly junior enlisted, can rate and review their dining facility and their living conditions. They can see what the rooms are going to look like. They can see what the dining facility is going to be like, whether they're great or they're terrible. And they can see that. So, and then also it gives a broader view to those that aren't in the military. I spoke with a soldier once, and she was telling me that one of her friends thought because she was in the military, she can be living like the Kardashians in the barracks. And that's not always the case. You may be sharing a room. I've seen reviews of soldiers sleeping in the kitchen area of their barracks because they're doubling up the rooms. So that's not always the case that you're going to have rooms like the Kardashians.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's kind of where Hots&Cots came from, and kind of where I started. The name Hots&Cots was kind of just myself and some other veterans. We were chatting about a name, and somebody threw out Hots&Cots, and it kind of stuck, and I ran with it, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool, because that's an awesome opportunity for the young soldiers to be able to get that kind of stuff, to get access to the app and to be able to report the stuff. So when someone reports now, how does it get to the proper channels? How does it get to the people? And how do you set that up?
Yeah. So originally when I started Hots&Cots, there was no plan. There was no plan in place on getting these reviews, like the negative reviews, to proper leaders. It all started with word of mouth. JBLM, it started with JBLM. They saw the Army Times did an article when I released it, and JBLM, the installation commander, said, I want to work with that guy. I want to be able to take those reviews and make the improvements at our installation. And I still, to this day, I have a working relationship with JBLM. And then it kind of sort of grew from there. Like a review would come up, a negative review or something bad going on, and I would post it on social media, and some leader would message me on social media and be like, hey, can you give us this information? Can you help us out? We want to address this. And it sort of just kind of continued from there. Leaders that care about the quality of life for service members are reaching out to me when they see a review, and they're asking for information. Now, part of Hots&Cots is it's anonymous, because there is a stigma. There is this concern of, am I going to get in trouble for speaking out? And that's still to this day, that is still a concern with service members. Weekly, I'm talking to a service member about wanting to stay anonymous, because they're not getting the traction from their leadership. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to jeopardize their career. They've hit a roadblock on getting issues resolved. So I will work with that soldier and that leadership and try to juggle them remaining anonymous at the same time getting the issue addressed. Now, some service members will absolutely reveal who they are. And, there was an issue over at Fort Bragg. I worked with a soldier and I worked with leadership, and I was able to connect the two together to get this issue addressed and work it out. So it all kind of varies. The mileage will vary. Some leaders are very much, I shouldn't say some, a lot of the leaders that I work with, that I back channel issues through, have the best interest for soldiers in getting issues addressed.
Okay. So now we're on to the current climate here, especially with the U.S. Army, with the latest report from the fiscal year 2024, where they collected BAS, which is your basic allowance sustenance for the food from the soldiers. Basically, the lower enlisted, you're basically 50% of the military is in the E4 or below. And so you're taking that from most of those guys that are living on post in the barracks, and it's supposed to be used for food. And it's supposed to be going toward providing, I think I forget how many meals per week it is that they're supposed to be able to provide. But anyway, but the report is 12 locations reported that they only used a small portion of it. $151 million never got used out of the 270 or 217 million that was removed from BAS. So can you talk about what you're seeing? Is there any correlation with that?
Yeah. So real quick, there was a MILPER that came out yesterday where the Army has said that reporting is inaccurate. So I don't know if you saw that. There's a new MILPER out that came out. Actually, I can tell you the MILPER number right now. If you give me, I can pull it up. It literally came out yesterday evening. Somebody was telling me it's MILPER 25-074, and basically the Army is saying they're denying that is the case. And additionally, there's been no proof to kind of to say otherwise. They're saying, trust us, believe us, this is accurate. They didn't come back with any numbers. They didn't come back with any sort of breakdown. It was just basically saying the reporting is inaccurate, which is a little concerning, because I think if you're going to refute something, you should have some sort of information to back it up. You need to come in with receipts.
Yeah.
And the Army did not. So it's a little concerning about that. So Steve and the reporter who broke this story, Steve at military.com, he gave the Army ample notice of this report was coming out. He started this, I want to say, back in maybe December-ish, and not even before that he gave the Army notice. So it's kind of shocking that they're still not, they're still kind of pushing back. They're pushing back that this is not accurate.
Well, that's what they usually do, is deny until there's absolute irrefutable proof that it happened, and then they're like, oh well, it happened, but we're fixing it. That'll be the next step. So it was funny. I saw the letter that got penned to Congress with the 21 senators, congressmen. That said, and it was surprising. I started going down the list of all those that are on there, and it was all Democrats, and it was crazy because they're the ones pushing back on DOGE, trying to get accountability for funding and waste and fraudulence, but they're okay with trying to find out if this is fraudulent or not.
Yeah, it was definitely majority Democrats. There were a few on the congressional side that were Republicans. Don Bacon, he's a huge proponent of the quality of life initiatives. He's on the quality of life panel. I had the opportunity to kind of speak with him briefly back in December, and a few other congressional members as well on the quality of life panel. So here's my problem. The dilemma, I guess, the thing that I run into frequently, especially now in this political climate, is that there are individuals trying to make this into a partisan issue. And this is not a partisan, this is a bipartisan issue. And I really try my hardest. It's a hard line to balance. I try to stay out of the political side of this, But at the end of the day, the soldiers don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat. They don't care what your political affiliation is. At the end of the day, they want the Army, the Air Force, the military as a whole to uphold their end of the bargain when they sign that contract, that they would be provided housing that's clean and safe and quality food. Um, so I've dealt with this, I've shared this story, but growing up, I didn't food insecurity was a real issue for me. I grew up in a house that had cockroaches, mold. I mean, there was times I didn't have running water. Um, there were times I'd come home and the power would be turned off. There was not a great upbringing. Like my dad, he worked very hard, but he had his challenges in life. He worked with the best card that he was dealt. And one of the things that recruiters share with those that are trying to sign is join the military, travel the world. You're going to have all your food, your barracks, your housing taken care of. But what does that mean when you sign that contract and the barracks, your housing, and your food is the equivalent of what you just came from? Like, what does that say? Like, what is that like? Why did I do this? Why did I sign this contract? What I thought I was going to get out of my living condition that I was in to just go to the same living condition, to have that same quality of life. So, like I said, at the end of the day, service members, they just want to have the military uphold their end of the bargain, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and so like this whole thing with Doge, and I hear that, I see it a lot, I get tagged in a lot, especially now. And you know, there is a certain degree, the Army, the military is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I can't, I don't, you're telling me we can't figure out how to provide housing and safe housing and good quality food to service members. I don't know. It's really kind of, and that's something I just can't figure out.
Yeah. So I remember the barracks we had at Prince Sultan Air Base, and I mean, they were
Mhm.
like, they weren't special by any means, but
Mhm.
other than the fact that they had thicker walls because it was built to withstand, they had like 3 foot thick walls or 2 foot thick walls. The windows were, really, really narrow and thick. Um, but the barracks were like very simple, but
Mhm.
they were nice. The
Yeah.
showers were simple, but they were nice. The place was like very, very well kept. And then, we get back and I hear about these guys. I mean, we Fort Gordon, or uh, whatever it's called now, here in Augusta area, they had mobile,
Mhm.
like basically stacked trailers that they had turned into this barracks for a while they were building new barracks. And then, it's I don't know, the amount of money that we spend on certain things, sometimes you don't see the results of it, or you see the results of, like, seeing a nice brand new barracks, and then there's guys living in barracks that are 30 years old, 40 years old, and when they get rid of these mobile barracks, they sell those off. They can't move them to another facility. They can't reuse them. They just sell them off to civilians or civilian contractors to dispose of.
Mhm.
And like, well, why aren't we doing that, moving that around or whatever, to while we're having improvements done? And then, you know, one of the big questions I did have for you that was on the are you seeing a trend on facilities that they're closing down defects indefinitely and then only leaving a couple open at all these bases, and then they're not opening up like a food truck, or they're not opening up other opportunities for them, or not providing transportation for soldiers to get to the defects that are open? What are you seeing? Are you seeing any correlation with that based on some of the numbers that came out of this fiscal year report?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what I can say that I've seen is that the Army is heavily investing in the kiosk system. Um, Now, to that, something else is that there are I don't know if it's a trend, but they do close dining facilities down. The Army will close dining facilities down when there's a certain utilization threshold met. Now, why? So if a certain threshold is met, and for headcount and utilization, they will close the dining facility down and then reallocate those service members or soldiers to another dining facility. Those dining facilities may not always be within close distance, and not all service members have vehicles. So then now you have this issue, like, how are we going to get to service members? How can they get to these dining facilities? Which is a challenge. Now, a question I have, and no one's really been able to answer this, is why is there a protocol in place to close down a dining facility when there's a certain utilization met or not being met? Why is there not a protocol in place to try to improve the dining facility, to get the utilization back up? Like, why are we looking at this from, I guess, a glass half empty instead of a glass half full? Like, what can we do to improve the headcount? And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Service members say the food isn't great. We don't want to eat there, so they don't eat there. Dining facility, they're like, okay, no one's eating here, so we're going to close things down. Well, why don't you improve the dining facility, improve the quality of food, improve whatever the challenges are, and get service members back in? What are other dining facilities doing that are doing great versus others? Like Snipes over at Fort Campbell, Snipes American, I think Snipes restaurant or something like that. But if you go on Instagram, the food manager over there is just crushing it. Like, the food.
You froze again.
Presentation, the food quality, the food options, it's all great over there. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is this good? Okay. So it's Snipes American Restaurant over at Fort Campbell. Their food presentation, the food quality, it's all great. So what is that dining facility doing great? What are they doing well that maybe other dining facilities can be improved on? Is there a lesson? Is there something they can do to kind of recreate that at another installation, like say Fort Bragg, where they don't always have the great food options? So as I mentioned, going back to kiosks, the Army is heavily investing in the kiosk system until they kind of come to a bigger decision, which I think it's supposed to be like campus style dining. And now they're supposed to be bringing these to other installations coming soon. I don't know the time frame. They're supposed to be saying, I think, end of this year. We'll see. They've been talking about campus style dining since 2024 is when I first heard about it. At a conference.
I've read articles like even by Bannon that were from 2017 where they were talking about it and bringing it up, and it was starting to be implemented.
Yeah, it's kind of. I just hope this doesn't turn into the fiasco of. I don't know if you remember, but I'm sure many of the GWAT folks remember. About every other month, there was a story on military.com or Army Times about the new PT test coming. Every couple months you'd read about a new PT test, and then you show up there and you're doing the same push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. I mean, there's now the AFCT, which is the new one, and that it finally came. But it was many years. It took a long time. So I'm hoping that end of this year we'll start seeing more of these campus-style dining restaurants pop up, and maybe less emphasis on the kiosks, which it's. I'm torn. Some service members say they like it. I think maybe they like it because it's the best thing they have quality-wise. It's a consistent quality. It's not the healthiest. It doesn't follow the 40-25 for food nutrition values. They can't get as much because they don't have as much buying power at a kiosk. You can't, like, for example, you can't get a milk and a yogurt together, which is just kind of blows my mind. So I think the kiosks are trying to fill that void of where there's not a dining facility. Now, there's a lot of debate on whether that's the right answer, but the Army is seeing as, okay, well, we're providing the service members food. So
yeah, so I was scrolling through and several articles in the last couple of weeks. I've been looking at several articles, and there was one from last year, probably around July or August of 2024. They had Chef Irvine meet up at the Pentagon, and he was talking to a lot of the guys in charge of all the dining facilities and stuff and all that stuff up there. There's some kind of board for the Army food program, and so he was talking with them about how to improve it and all that kind of stuff. but it has, I think a lot of it, and I found this to be very, very true. The people that are passionate about serving good food will provide good food. They will go out of their way. They will sacrifice. They will spend the time to make good food for those that they're serving, because it's an attitude, and it's a moral compass, if you will,
Yeah.
on making sure you're providing quality for those you're serving. And I think my personal opinion, and I don't know, I can't back this up with anything, is I think there's a culture in a lot of these dining facilities, and even in some of the leadership involved with it. It's like, we're just here to do a job, make the sausage, make the eggs, pump it out, push it out. Don't worry whether it's good or not. We just got to get it done. We got all this stuff. We got to get it done. And instead of, no, let's make sure it's good quality food. I mean, we've seen some of it on your Hots&Cots. I mean, you got a soldier. One of them was, he found worms in his fish, went back and told the dining facility about it, and they tried to offer him fish from the same serving line. It's like, how about, like, jumping up and saying, okay, we got to figure out what we got to do here, and inspect everything and make sure we're not putting out a piss poor quality product.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same review that I'm thinking of, but it was recently it's probably Fort Carson, and I actually spoke with the leadership there. Again, this is leadership taking the initiative. They care, and they want to see the improvements, and they saw that review, and they saw I don't know if they saw the review on Hots&Cots, or if they saw kind of the report at the dining facility, but they immediately took care of it. They escalated it up to the proper channels. Now, so I mean, there are those instances, those cases, and like you said, it's food is kind of like a love language at this. So when they want to, and you see that, like, I go back to Fort Campbell. The chief went to this food. He talks about it. He went to this class. I don't even know how long it was, but I spoke with him briefly, and he brought back what he learned to share with the other with the workers there. Part of joining the military is finding your career and what you like. And 92 Golfs, they get a lot of hate. They're kind of the butt of jokes at times, but some went into being cooks because they like food. They want to take that passion for food beyond the military, and the military gives you a start. We talk about going to the military. Hey, go to military to learn how to kind of be in the medical field, whether that's doctor, a medic, whatever that may be, because they want to be able to use that outside, or maybe JAG. Why can't that be applied to someone, let's say, to cook? Like, why not? It doesn't always have to be these, or maybe like pilots, they're going to go to the military to get their pilot's line, to get the flying hours, and then they take it to the civilian world. The same could be applied to those in the 92 Golf series. Like, they join the military, get experience with food, working at a large scale type restaurant feel, and then take that to the outside world. Maybe they want to start a business. Maybe they want to go work for a larger corporation as a cook, whatever that may be. But I think there are those who really do have a passion for food.
Yeah. I'm wondering personally, I wonder if it's also something that could be caught or trained at the AIT for the 92 Golfs, if it's something that could be done culturally there within the leadership that's in the training of these cooks, is to one, find those that are really passionate about it, or instill some of those values of making sure that the soldiers eat good, making sure you're putting out a quality product, and then also don't say, if you're cooking something and you say it'd be all right, that right there tells me you should throw it away, cook something else. I'm that way with a lot of the stuff that I do. I'm a handyman, as an aircraft mechanic. I love to cook food, but if it's never just going to be all right, you need to, this needs to be putting out the best thing possible. And then also the staff, my personal opinion, the staff should be trained to the point where it's like, when you're on the serving line, when you're in the DFAC, you eat after all the service has been completed. You don't eat until the soldiers have eaten, because that one thing I was trained early on, and I got it from Boy Scouts, and it was a lot of military guys there. It's like, be a leader in that aspect, because that's what leadership does. They'll eat after their soldiers eat. Well, as in the dining facility, it would be making sure that there's enough food for all the soldiers. Because if you didn't prepare enough food, then you're not going to get to eat, or so you're going to make sure if you know you're eating last, you'll make sure there's plenty of food to feed the crowd that's coming in, and you'll make sure there's a
Yeah.
little extra. I would rather see these dining facilities throw some food away than have soldiers go in and toward the end of the service and go in and there's nothing left but a sandwich or like that one up at Fort Carson where they had the lima beans for Thanksgiving and a piece of bread.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is true. And Fort Carson, that picture is going to haunt them for a very, very long time. And if I think what soldiers want is they want food readily available. Fort Carson, they did have that image, and my understanding is if they would have waited 15 or so minutes, there would have been more food. But when you look at that imagery, it was pretty picked over already. And if you're a service member and you're just finishing up work and you just want to eat, I don't think you want to wait 15, 20 minutes for food. And that incident was not an isolated incident. They were having a lot of kind of other food issues and struggles prior to that. And they've turned around a lot of the challenges. I've not seen any really major negative reviews coming across, a lot of positive stuff, and they've made improvements. So, they leaned into Hots&Cots, they leaned into those reviews and the soldiers' feedback, and they made changes. And I hope other dining facilities would do the same thing as well when they see sort of reviews coming up on Hots&Cots that are negative. I just wonder, like, going back to the BAS kind of conversation, there's a lot of money being left on the table. So where's that money being used, or why is it not being used? Really, it's a question. And to make the improvements to the dining facility, to the food quality, to the food access for these soldiers. Fort Stewart, Fort Bragg, Hunter Army Airfield, like a lot of those installations, it's not really clear where that money is going. And I know the Army is saying that all the money was accounted for, but based on reviews and things that I see, that doesn't seem to be the case. I think the average rating for a meal on Hots&Cots right now is 3.5 right now for the dining facilities, and that's out of 447 reviews across all branches. If I dig into that data a little bit more based on branch, it may be higher, maybe lower, depending on where you're at. But right now, soldiers don't view that their BAS is being used appropriately. And that's kind of, I think, at the core of this. Whether all the money is accounted for or not, service members do not feel that they're getting the best value for the money they're paying into, something they have to pay into. They don't have an option. That's money that's being taken out. And some service members may say, I could eat better if you just give me the money myself.
Yeah. Well, I heard that there was, I don't know if they're doing it down in Fort Stewart or not, but there was one base that was doing, they put food trucks out at the dining facilities that were closed for maintenance or whatever. They put food trucks out for the meal times to try to supplement. And I don't know what those food trucks are. They just say food trucks. I don't know if those are like taco trucks or if those are roach coaches. Because if it's roach coaches, Lord have mercy. I
don't think it's those. I think they're actual legitimate food trucks. I don't know. And it's probably, I can't say for certain. I think it's a mixture of some, depending on, I think it just varies on installation, but maybe some that are ran by civilians and some that are ran by the military. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty confident not the roach coaches that we are kind of accustomed to, maybe if you're out in the field or something.
Yeah. Well, when I was at AIT, when we were out at the fuel farm out there, they would have the roach coach show up every so often for us out there for snacks or lunch or whatever. So we could stay out there, and it was.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I think it's like kind of legitimate food trucks, kind of like maybe what you're like in the big box trucks type stuff.
Yeah. Well, we can only hope. So so the last kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about was, do you know or have any data on some of these facilities that are underperforming or overperform, the ones that are doing really well versus the ones that aren't doing really well? Is there a correlation between whether they're civilian run or if they're actually 92 golfs that are running them?
Yeah, I don't have that data, so I don't and I don't know if soldiers always know that when they go to leave these reviews. So it's not a data point that I can track. It'd be a really good data point to track, to know if it's kind of civilian ran or it's kind of a military ran one. And that might be something I look into, but I really don't know of which ones are great, based on whether they're military ran, civilian ran type stuff.
Yeah, because I was reading a report where there was one that were actually talking about privatizing it a little bit and going more to the civilian run DFAC facility to allow the 92 golfs to focus on training and doing field focus more on field stuff, which is what they're technically supposed to be doing. And that way they're also available then to go to these like NTC and available to go do the extra and fill in, for events and training exercises and whatnot. Instead of, because what I've seen on some of the reports and stuff is they'll close, when a unit goes to the field, or say they need extra,
Hmm.
NPC, they'll pull them from like Fort Hood or Cavazos or whatever it is out there to take them and put them in at NTC, and then you have 3 chow halls that are down, and nobody, no food trucks, no nothing to cover that.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I think it was last year when they were talking about the downsizing the 92 Fox or 92, sorry, 92 Golfs, um, and then to have them kind of refocus on field feeding, like you said. I remember seeing that last year and moving to a kind of a privatized. And I don't know what that looks like or what the status is. And I just wonder. I know there's a lot of conversation, and even around barracks, it's like privatizing barracks. And I don't know if there's value, if it's a good move or a bad move, you know, and maybe it would be. I don't know. I just know in our current climate right now is soldiers and service members don't feel they're getting the best value for their money. Now, if civilians can run it better and give better quality food, then sure, let's do it. Let's move forward with that and get the service members the food they deserve. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the right answer. I just know that service members aren't really fond of sometimes the dining facilities and the food they're serving up.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't know if it would be a good idea or not, because it could add more bureaucracy to it and make it harder to get things accomplished. Because when you add extra layers of reporting and all that kind of stuff, at least with the 92 golfs, there's a chain of command. You have, they're still part of the Army, and they have to report to command. Where there's, things that can be done, where there's a civilian, then you have to go to a different
Yeah.
for when you report problems.
You're right, and you see that in the privatized housing area. Service members have same struggles there. So it's like, how do we know those? It's like the conversation of privatizing barracks. How do we know that the same challenges that housing has isn't going to bleed into barracks if we privatize them? And it could be said the same also for dining facilities. And even back to kind of DPW. That's privately. That's kind of privatized. It's they're the ones that's responsible for maintenance, and we see the conditions of barracks. I'm not saying the condition of the barracks is the cause of DPW. I'm just saying that there's a kind of there's a connection there at some point of DPW's maintenance and the conditions of barracks. Is DPW fulfilling their end of the bargain of maintaining barracks? And if we privatize dining facilities, what does that look like, or what new challenges are going to kind of come across with that? So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question though.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other thing I've seen, I see a lot of officers that say they want to do something about all this stuff. You see a lot of, like, going back to 2017, officers would submit reports on how to, like, the whole thing for the campus dining. An officer would come out, he'd go check out a facility, he would talk to a bunch of people, put this elaborate, presentation together, submit it, and then there's no follow-up. And then you have
Yeah, I
another
wish.
officer comes along behind him 2 years later, points out the same exact stuff, submits it, and then nothing happens. And my thought is why are there not more diverse investigations going on, reports going on, where you see enlisted being interviewed and in charge and have some skin in the game, as well as just officers? Because I think what it is, the officers are just, they're putting these reports to feather in their cap for their next promotion and all that. I looked into this stuff. Here's my thing. I submitted my package and I moved on. There's no follow up. The guys that are enlisted are stuck there. So they'll have a vested interest in making sure that something gets followed up on. And if they're given they're empowered to ask the questions of command, I would think that there'd be more accountability.
Yeah, I mean, you keyed on something that's important. At the end of the junior enlisted are the ones that are kind of bearing the brunt of this. You know, they're the ones at the end of the day are living in the barracks and kind of living in the day-to-day of this situation with the barracks and the dining facilities. And there are some leaders that kind of, I just wish we used the same energy that we took and we still take to ensuring that our gear and our equipment is up to date and is the latest and greatest. You know, when the surge, when Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom and all that kicked off after 9/11, you know, I did not deploy directly to Iraq during that time frame, but I did end up deploying later on with some of those that deployed in the initial deployments. That the equipment at that time wasn't the greatest. You know, we went into Iraq with sandbags. There was no unarmored vehicles. There was no MRAPs. There was none of that stuff. And then you fast forward several years later, we made huge strides and steps in providing equipment. You know, eventually you had up-armored Humvees, you had MRAPs, you had all this stuff to keep service members safe in the war zone. And that took a lot of energy, a lot of dedication from leaders and civilian contractors and such. Why are we not using that same energy to resolve barracks and dining facility issues at such a pace, you know, at a slow pace, in my opinion? Especially now, you know, Sergeant Major of the Army talks about large scale wars on the horizon. You know, my concern is that's going to potentially kick off. And then what does that mean for quality of life initiatives? Is that not going to remain on the forefront? Are we kind of let those things kind of go to the wayside again?
Yeah. Well, those are all good things that we should be considering. We need to try to keep holding all the leadership accountable. And I'm so happy you've got this app, and I'm waiting. I always look forward to, like, I see the little Hots&Cots logo on my notification bar on my phone, and I'm like, oh no, what's going on? What happened today? And some of it's good stuff, which is awesome to see some of the good stuff. Like this morning, they were talking about there's a meeting. They're having a nice fine dining coffee and brunch thing going on, and somebody was posting, like, man, this is pretty good. And then I love some of your stuff you've been posting on Twitter or X about trying to get the Wienermobile on the review on the Hots&Cots. And
I got it.
You got it. Yeah. So, you know, keeping that kind of stuff going, keep it fun, keep it, you know, and just getting the word out. I mean, so the only thing is, how many users do you have right now do you have a number on how many users have the app downloaded?
Yeah. So when I checked into January downloads, I was over 10,000 downloads. I'm probably now probably around 12,000 now downloads that I've had on iOS and Android. You know, it's continually growing. You know, website traffic now is just continually growing. I think probably on a daily basis now, I'm getting on the website alone. This doesn't include the app, but let me pull this up real quick. But it's so in the last 7 days, on average, I'm getting around 250 visitors a day. So I mean, that's significant. I mean, it's getting attention. People are viewing it. Leaders are viewing it, which is great. Because I want to hold those accountable. I want to also show what's working, what's not working, and also provide a resource for the junior enlisted to, when they're PCSing or they're going to go to a new installation, they know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find you, and where can everybody find you and follow Hots&Cots and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you can get Hots&Cots on iOS and Android for free. There's no ads. I'm not tracking any of your stuff. Or you can go out to the website, hots&cots.app, and you can view content. You can get links to download as well from there.
All right. And how are you funded?
Yeah, so it's user-based funded. It's all voluntary. It's all optional. You can donate in the app. You can contribute in the app, or you can contribute on the website. And then I also have merchandise. If you want to purchase merchandise to show support, there's a link on the website. But it's all user-based funded. It's crowdsourced, and I very much appreciate of those who've contributed and helped with keeping Hots&Cots going, because it's really those that have been helping with that. So thank you.
You're welcome, man. I want to encourage everyone to go and support Hots&Cots. They're doing a great job. And thank you, Rob. I really do appreciate you sitting down with us and taking time out of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.